Sharon Woodhouse is an author coach and publishing consultant who's worked with hundreds of first time and experienced authors, publishers, and small business owners, some of them in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Sharon was an independent publisher who got her start when she founded her first publishing company, the Chicago based Lake Claremont Press, or LCP. LCP published over 500,000 books of 80 different titles in its 25 years and won 30 small press awards. She is now the owner of Conspire Creative, a book business agency that helps authors build and expand their author businesses. Her firm's services include book marketing, project management, and entrepreneurial publishing. She helps aspiring or experienced authors hire ghostwriters, find designers, illustrators, editors, and indexers, or even create their websites. She created the Profitable Author Life Facebook group and uses that platform and others such as Medium and Substack to help authors make a living from their books. Sharon has a certification from the Interpersonal Neurobiology Mindset Approach to Well-Being, and she is a member of the International Coaching Federation and the Coach Training Alliance. Listen to this episode of the Age Has No Limit podcast to learn what she enjoys the most about the book business and her book business agency, about two of the client experiences she found the most rewarding, how being an entrepreneur has enriched her life, and what an Age Has No Limit life means to her. Welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast. Stick around. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Age Has No Limit podcast. So with me is Sharon Woodhouse. Sharon is an author coach, a publishing consultant, and she's worked with many first-time authors. Some of them are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But before we dig into Sharon, what she does, I'd like to learn more about Sharon, the person. Sharon, as I was preparing for the episode, I was just curious about you, about where you come from, what was your childhood like growing up. So if you can tell us a little bit about who Sharon Woodhouse is.
As I was saying before, I'm a fourth generation Chicagoan, grew up in the city in a classic brick two flat. And, one parent was a Cubs fan, the other from a Sox fan family. So that's a classic Chicago blend. But I always knew I was going to leave the neighborhood. And I initially was going to study international relations and got into peace studies and then at some point I missed Chicago and came back before I finished college to finish in Chicago and studied philosophy. So another thing that's really big with vexing questions, unsolvable problems. And at some point I discovered publishing, and it was just going to be I was going to publish one book to make enough money to go back to grad school, pay off my student loans. And I don't know why I thought one book was going to do it, but it was a brand new concept then, desktop publishing. And I had even written most of my book on a typewriter and then translated to a computer when I had the chance to borrow one. So that was the 90s. And, I just found enough challenge and joy and creativity in small business that it really became my thing. And books, I've always been a reader and a book lover. And so it's been a great combination. And my whole career and small business life has been built around publishing and books and authors and author events and project management for books. And so I've been lucky to keep finding new things in that world.
So you mentioned something that I'd like to pick up on. You said that you studied international relations. Were you able to work in that space at all? I asked because that was actually my first major. And I just love anything global, international, international culture, just anything about the world at large. I really like to learn a lot about. So I'd love to learn about your early career and how that, how you moved into the publishing space. I know you said you wanted to write the book, but you took a much deeper dive into publishing than many others probably would.
Well, I never worked in that space,
Mhm,
and I left a graduate program in philosophy. One
mhm.
of the things is I came from a blue collar background, and I just had no knowledge or experience of what the world expected of you. How do you get these jobs in the world? So I just really, even though I was a really good student, and I just didn't know how to be in the world. What was I
Mm,
supposed to do as an adult? How do I get these opportunities? I didn't know those things. And that's just fine because I'm really capable of making my own opportunities. And I definitely have learned how to do that because that's what business forces you to do.
mhm,
And with a philosophy degree, you sort of need to
mhm.
find your way because no one's going to give you a job as a philosopher. And so that's sort of the origin of it. And the other thing is, I had assumed I was going to be a writer most of my life. And the second book I published was just so successful,
Mm,
it forced me to set up a business. And that was the start of it. It was also kind of funny. It was a special deal I made with the author. We'll split the profits 50-50. So something that no author really has with a traditional publisher. But in the first couple of years, I think we each made $50,000 off the
wow.
book.
Mhm,
So for a little regional book, that was an amazing success. And no other book was that successful that fast ever since.
mhm.
So the author made $50,000 and I had a business, built a business with my money and then just kept on going.
Definitely want to pick up on that. So there are a couple of things. Number one, tell me the names of those books. Let me know if they're still available. And
Uh,
it sounds like you made the $100,000 before Amazon, right? If it was back then, was
it
it?
was brand new then. I don't remember if the first book was even on Amazon, but I
Mm-hmm.
was going door to door with
Mm-hmm.
bookstores with a cart,
Yeah, yeah,
putting up flyers on piece of 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper.
yeah, yeah.
Those were the days where sometimes I would retype a letter 5 times
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so that's the span that I've lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And are you able to tell us the name of those books?
Yeah, the book that was so popular became a series, and it was a Chicago Haunt series. It was written
Mm-hmm.
by a childhood friend.
Mm-hmm.
And we were friends because we both came to first grade knowing how to read. So we were in a special reading class. And then when we became adults, we sort of ran into each other in a grocery store at an odd time. And she said she was working on a book. And I said, well, I think I want to be a publisher. And so that's when we made the deal. And her book eventually became like a 4-book series. And I sold it right before the recession or in 2008 to another publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And, she went on to build a business around her. She did ghost tours in Chicago,
Oh,
and that
wow.
lasted for 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we both turned that one experience into part of our livelihoods. So that
Yeah.
was,
That's a very interesting story. There's so much I can pick up on, especially, around the ghost tours and just how unique that is. And then, well, unique in some regards, but I really want to talk about something that you brought up, and that is you are a small business advocate. And what you described was basically using what's now called grassroots marketing to basically launch a successful book. And as a result, you probably learned a lot of really good lessons so that now that we have all the tools that makes this a lot easier, you've probably been able to master all of these things. So would love to learn how that experience you think has really helped to craft you into the author coach and publishing consultant you are now.
yeah, I think I carry some very specific things that are distinct to my approach from that. And that is you sort of do things whether or not you feel like it.
Oh, absolutely.
You just are brave enough to do it. Nothing
Yeah.
is going to happen. So my focus, and I encourage people, is to be very outreach focused.
Mhm.
Get on the phone. If someone doesn't, you can send an email, but if they don't answer, get on the phone, leave a message, or and propose things to people.
Yeah.
Make proposals. You have to get over your fear of rejection, fear of being embarrassed, a sense that something has to be perfect or that you have to feel just right.
Mhm.
I mean, it's sort of like, I like the idea that you're just going to work.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel like it sometimes. You just do the best you can on that day,
Mhm.
but reaching out and trying to promote or trying to sell or trying to make a connection, that's how you make connections and sell and promote, and you can, we have tools like digital funnels, but they don't work for all books. Some books really well, others really require, there's so many templates and models I've discovered people use. Like if you're the expert and the TED talker, you can do one thing. If you're someone with a little regional book, you can do this. If you have a really bizarre niche, those books do well on Amazon because people are fans of those books.
Yeah.
And they know they just read one after another. So people who read a certain type of mystery, a certain type of romance, a certain type of sci-fi book, authors of books like that they can narrow down into those subgenres. And if they're a good writer, they can do well with all of the digital bells and whistles. A lot of other,
No, go right ahead. You were gonna.
No, just a lot of other people, they really just need to throw themselves into the niche. And that's a lot of the people I work with, the people who have had a hobby for 30 years that realize they have an intense amount of knowledge and that they love sharing it. So they go to the hobbyist shows, the conventions, they write for publications that serve that niche. And that is also a good way for the average person who's not necessarily a professional writer, but solid, to make a living around a book and to improve their life, to enjoy. And you see that in retirement a lot. People enhance their retirement by learning new skills, by engaging in their hobbies, make some money.
Yeah. I really like that. So as you were describing your experience and some of the things that you've learned as a result of it, I kept thinking, okay, what she's saying is it truly is, the success is going to be in the niche. That's number one. And number two, you mentioned the fact that sometimes you have to do things whether you feel like it or not. And this is something I also share in the Ready, Set, Go Consult membership and in the YouTube channel, all of the different things that sometimes you have to push past the fear, push past the discomfort, humble yourself, understand that you don't know everything. And everything you just said is around, pushing past all of those, especially for those of us, and I include myself in that, who aren't really the outreach person, right? You're the person that's used to just kind of keeping your head down, getting it done. So thank you for, really basically solidifying and emphasizing how important that is. Now, one of the things I was able to learn about you is that you have a certification from the Interpersonal Neurobiology Mindset Approach to Well-Being. And as you were describing this, I kept thinking to myself, this is probably aligned in some way with that certification. As I was reading and I kept thinking to myself, okay, exactly what is interpersonal neurobiology? So, of course, I'm curious, and I'm sure the listeners are curious as well.
Yeah, I first learned about interpersonal neurobiology through a parenting book. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to learn. And so I think it was during the pandemic that I became certified through their online program. But interpersonal neurobiology is sort of an interdisciplinary framework that considers mind as energy and information flow. And that there's three aspects to mind. One is the structural, the brain and the neurons and the structural physical components. Your mind, which is your subjective experience, consciousness, and your interpersonal awareness. But then there's a sense of mind in this concept that's about what's between us in the relationship. So part of my mind exists when we start talking and interacting. And that's so interesting if you're in any sort of communication or coaching or therapy or lots of fields, just to know, because you sense that exists. Sometimes we don't. There's an information flow when we're talking, but there's also like something new that happens. And I think that's part of interpersonal neurobiology, is something biological and subjective and interrelational is happening when we interact.
Okay, that actually that I'm going to pick up on that again because there's so much to unpack from that. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've also been learning. And it's one of the things I encourage all of us to do is to keep learning about just that. Maybe not to that extent, but the mind itself, what we know, as you said, the physical component, the neurons, all of the connections, but then the mind and understanding that the mind is not necessarily in our brains. It could even be outside of us. It's just the whole idea of, and how, because it's outside of us, right? why we are able to pick up on vibes, and just so many things that
Yeah.
I'm learning about this other part of ourselves that I think we probably don't explore enough. So I really appreciate you, helping us understand that. Now, and it's kind of interesting you brought up how sometimes understanding that helps you with coaching. Unlike many other coaches, you're actually a certified coach, right? So it's you are a member of the International Coaching Federation and the Coach Training Alliance. So what are your thoughts about the current coaching industry?
Um, well, I think I am with a lot of coaches when people without training call themselves a coach, you feel like, oh, it's such a well-established field that's becoming more rigorous.
Mhm.
Uh, and so you kind of feel like, oh, wow, everyone's just using the word coach when there's actually this well-established field that is just so interesting. But I actually have two very different ideas about it. One is there are the people who keep wanting to make coaching require more licensing, more training, jumping through more hoops to be official.
Mhm.
And I do like the field of coaching as sort of a pure practice. The coach doesn't give advice. The coach just is there to bring it all out of you. They are a trained facilitator to guide you where you want to go with your own information and wisdom.
Mhm.
And they just sort of pull it out and move you along. And I love that. But I do not think it sells because people don't have the experience of it. They don't have enough of a concept. It's a little vague. Uh, but I love the pure coaching and I respect that as a very defined and growing field.
Mhm.
But I think most people want something specific, and any coach can help with that. So I wanted to practice this pure coaching I'm thinking of. But when people come to me, they actually want my experience. They want the expertise I have. They want my perspective as an insider. And I have a few specialties: author businesses, entrepreneurial publishing, book marketing, how to, I've just done so many different types of books and so many things in the field that I practice a hybrid now.
Mhm.
But I also, on the other end from that extreme licensing world, I do think that if someone is good at what they're doing, this is my business hat, if someone is good at what they're doing and people are paying them for it, good for them. And good for their client, good for them, good for the economy, good. This is something that AI can't do,
Yeah.
coaching.
Yeah.
And if someone finds a way to connect with others in a way they're willing to pay for and that makes a difference in their life, that's, I don't know. I don't get involved, I guess, in the
Mhm.
technicalities of it, but I think that's how I perceive the
Mhm.
field of coaching at the moment.
Yeah. You're connecting a lot of dots for me. Now, what if a person listening right now wanted to become a coach? What would you recommend that they do? What institution, what organization do you think is a great place to learn how to become a coach, and maybe even institutions or organizations to help them really hone their craft?
Yeah, I think there are dozens and dozens of nice certified programs, and some of them are at the university level. Some of them come through coach specific trainings.
Hmm.
I think if you go to ICF, the International Coach Federation website, you could find a certified program, and any of them would be fine.
Hmm.
And it really, the thing about coaching, and everyone I know who's gone through formal coaching programs, they're rigorous. They will change your mindset in general about interacting with other people. And that alone is valuable, whether or not you practice as a coach. I think it helps with parenting, with friendships, with all your relationships, with how you are inside when you are assessing a new human being in front of you, or even just standing in line at the store. I think coaching is so valuable for your own personal reasons and your relationships.
Hmm.
Uh, and then when you get the formal training, it changes how you will interact in those professional settings in which you're practicing. So,
Hmm.
but there are dozens, if not hundreds.
Oh.
It's international.
Mhm.
There are so many excellent programs,
Okay.
as
Well,
long as you get the training, right?
yes, exactly. Get the training, and yeah, that's so important. I think I asked the question because there are a lot of people, like you said, calling themselves coaches, and some of them may not be certified, and as a result, it may be having an impact on the field itself. So,
Yeah.
just thought I just thought I'd ask someone who was actually a member and certified. So, I want to talk now more about what you actually do. You have Conspire Creative. I'd love to learn about your services, who you serve, and how you serve them. You've already been giving us a
Sure.
really good insight into that, but let's focus on that right now. Mhm.
Yeah, so I was an independent publisher for 25 years. And at some point, about 13 years ago, I had a kid and I realized that my staff had been running my company and I was using half my time to help other authors and publishers and small businesses for free.
Mhm.
And that's when I was like, oh, okay, now I guess I should start charging for these services. So I sort of scaled back the traditional book publishing that I was doing and start consulting, and I got the coaching certification and just start charging people for my time at that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then other things happened, but then I started Conspire Creative to sort of encompass all of my publishing activities. So mostly I grew my business by just saying yes to the people who came to me, and almost it up until recently was almost 100% referral business. So that's managing projects for people. That could be anything from hiring a ghostwriter to getting the book published. So hiring the designers, the editors, the indexers, setting up a website, doing a leather-bound gala book for a gala with the ribbon insert, for to commemorate someone's 50-year career or a business's 75th anniversary, but also coaching, consulting, helping small presses get started, just answering questions for what's my best route for this book, self-publishing or traditional publishing? What's my best marketing route? So I do a lot of coaching, especially around meeting milestones. So finding an agent, finding a publisher, finishing a manuscript. And the other coaching I do is around building your author business. How do I make money? People start thinking of their writing as a hobby at some point. They're just dumping money into classes and courses and maybe designing their first book if they're going to self-publish. And I really encourage people to take an entrepreneurial approach, at whatever scale, because this discipline will help you and get actually the things you want out of your book, both the financial rewards, not necessarily everyone and all the financial rewards, but make money and not lose it. But also expand your world, expand your skill set, meet interesting new people, do things you didn't think were possible. And I think those are really exciting things. And that when you take this business-minded approach to it, and it does involve constantly expanding your comfort zone, but in a way that makes sense for you. Everyone doesn't have to be a speaker on big stages, or everyone doesn't have to do one bookstore event after another. You can tailor it to your own personality and what people want, but you take on the challenges, and that is how you're going to get what you want. Okay. So I don't know if I've hit all the things, but I serve, like I said before, I serve everyone from like the thought leaders and experts, the TED talkers, to someone who wants to create a beautiful book for their grandchildren, to someone who's writing their memoirs, having led a major organization, to coaching people into starting their own author business or making the money. They've been doing it for 15 years. How come they're not making any money yet? Mm-hmm. And from the outside, it looks like you'd be making money. So yeah, let's look at what's going on, because you have a name and a reputation, and people know your books, and you're on your 10th book, say, or so it's a whole smattering of things, and that's what I like, and I think that is how I serve people: the customization and the bringing in all of the experiences of everyone else. So it is not a formula. I mean, I have a bit of a framework, but this worked for people like you, and this worked for people with that specialty, and this is what you're telling me, and this is what your goals are. Let's do this. So I've done that, and now I'm trying to grow. I've taken on my first part-time employee, and I've always been working with freelancers and contractors. So I'm really trying to just grow that and help the people that now help me help more authors and publishers. And so everything, producing books, building mindsets.
No, I'm enjoying it. I'm listening to you because I'd
Yeah.
never heard the term author business, and I think that's really
Mhm.
important for us to understand that becoming an author and making fun money from the sales, at least for me, it's not just money from the sales. There are other things
Yeah.
other ways that one can capitalize on having a published book. So thanks
Yeah.
for, at least making that clear for me. I have a lot of questions, but I think I'll wait until after the recording. So you also have a private Facebook group. If you don't mind telling us the name of the Facebook group, and who are the members, and what does one gain from being a member in that group?
Okay, it's called Profitable Author Life, and my larger framework or constant pitches. You can build an income generating, sustainable, holistic author life you love.
Mm. Mhm.
It's possible. I know these things because I've watched hundreds of authors. I sort of taken a social science approach and kept track of what seems to work for everyone and narrowed that down to about 7 things
Mhm.
that if you kind of pay attention to these things, you can do it for yourself in your book. So the group currently is no charge. You just have to fill out the questionnaire to become it, and you have to be a published author or a soon to be published author, self-published, hybrid, or traditionally published. And you want to work on an author business of any size or scope. So basically you want to make more than you're spending, a part-time business or a full-time business. And it's just, I post something new every day on themes. So like Monday's mindsets, Tuesdays about events, Thursday's sales, Friday's business development, Wednesday's marketing. But also, so people share their experiences in creative ideas. So like really creative ticketed events was a recent topic that people chimed in on. And there are people there who are on their 12th book with major publishers, and some people who've just self-published their first book and everything in between, scholarly, nonfiction, fiction, uh, contemporary romances, children's books, travel guide series.
Mm.
They're just people who, and I like that. First, it matches my approach, but it's also the inspiration can come from anywhere. And I think that's one of the things that I love promoting is sometimes that's where we get the idea that works. It's working for someone else in an entirely different situation, but I adapted for myself. And that's the thing that was missing for me. And there's just so much. There's an infinite amount of information out there. You can't possibly process it all. And so it's just a friendly, supportive group with lots of ideas and information exchange.
Hmm.
See.
So, before we get too late into the show, I really would love for you to be able to tell us where we can find out more about your work. So you've shared the name of the Facebook group. Feel free to go ahead and share it again for those people who qualify. Of course, as she said, she'll let you know what that is and where else they can find out about the work that, your work.
Yeah, my website has everything. It's conspirecreative.com.
Mhm.
I also write regularly on Medium and Substack. I have about 200 articles there on all aspects of this. So if you're a Medium member, you have access to that. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, but the website has everything. I have a newsletter for people building author businesses, just goes out 3 times a month.
Mhm.
And I take it as my job to convince you that you should be an author business. I know that it's a hard sell for a lot of people. It's not what they're expecting. A lot of people imagine the day that a New York agent is going to wine and dine them in a fancy Manhattan restaurant.
Mhm.
And they're going to cultivate their craft
Mhm.
and, bring them to, and some people do have that life. It's very narrow, but the rest of us, it's still a large ecosystem and it's vibrant and there's room for everyone. But maybe you need a guide to show you how it's for you and where you fit and how to grow from where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the term wide ecosystem is so important. And so that's why they need a person like you to help them, like you said, sort it out. Even if it was just to figure out, okay, what are the sequential steps I should take before I even think about the mindset, because the mindset is extremely important, but even just to help them to figure out what they should do and how they should do it. So I think that's really great that you're pointing that out. Now, one of the things I always ask people is, share with me 1 to 2 client experiences that you found the most rewarding.
I think I have two categories of rewarding experiences. One is the production side of making books. So when I was a publisher, I tried to always do something different with each new book. And I published under my house a little over 100 books. And since then, I've probably had a hand in 200 plus books with clients. So I always try to learn something new from the production side and love the production challenges. And a few years ago, there was a man who had been working on his family genealogy for 14 years. He went back like 13 or 17 generations. He had a 900-page book.
Wow.
And just imagine trying to edit or evaluate someone's editing job of that book, especially since he had retyped from hand, firsthand primary sources of family wills and auction items. A farm was transferred and he retyped it by hand. And then we had to, and so it was massive. The index was massive. And then it had a nice leather cover. And then there was a beautiful fold out, full color family tree. So I had to hire a genealogist to create that for them. We had to make a special arrangement with the printer to figure out how are we going to, what's the best way to insert a massive family tree into a book of 900 pages.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's an example. And then on the other hand, there's a category of just every client has such distinct needs and they're so interesting. And I just love supporting. I'm just such a natural cheerleader for humans. And I just love supporting people's projects. So again, whether they're just an expert in their field or they're just someone like I have someone new that I worked with recently who is in her late 70s. She wrote a beautiful, beautiful, very readable book of 60 or 70 vignettes from the field she worked in. And I don't, since I didn't ask for permission yet, I'm not going to specify the field, but it's a niche field that people might be curious about. And it just captures the uniqueness of such a life, the human stories, the range of humans she dealt with in her life, and just a very simple, straightforward way of capturing it. So it's very hard to imagine people are not going to be moved by this. And she just wants to make some money to leave to her grandkids, to go on a cruise, and to spread certain messages that she thinks a lot of people need to hear related to this topic that she worked in. And every time she comes to her coaching sessions, she's done what she's promised and then some. And I'm like, wow, and so she is one active 77-year-old who just decided out of nowhere that she was going to do this, and she's doing it. And it's so lovely and inspiring. So that's just a great recent story.
Well, I think also what I'm taking away from that, I'm always, and maybe sometimes I overthink, but this person who's 77 years old has probably always been that kind of person who basically does what she says she's going to do. And it's, we're seeing it now with her as an active and motivated 77-year-old woman. Now, how would you say being an entrepreneur has enriched your life? You've definitely provided great examples, but any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, one thing I noticed right away early on, after, like I said, thinking I was going into international relations and then philosophy, is that in entrepreneurship, you can actually solve problems on a day-to-day basis. They may feel enormous, but they're, you solve those things. But I also think that at one point I became so good at solving problems that was my emphasis. And then a more seasoned entrepreneur said, your job isn't to solve problems. Your job is to create what you want. So don't get so focused on scanning the horizon and finding the problems to solve. Turn everything that you're encountering in your landscape into what you want. And I thought that was a much better frame. So you're not solving problems, you're using the material of your life and the day to create what you want, whether it's the relationships, the reputation for your business, more business. So I think it's definitely enriched my life. I've met so many people. I think I have the freedom that I always wanted inside, not to be trapped in a job, or I do not feel like, I feel like, it's up to me. and that's part of the thing. Yeah, I don't get a paycheck every week, but I have other things instead. And if I want to make a good living, then I do the things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Again, you're connecting dots for me. But again, I'll probably just revisit those after we this particular podcast. Now, what does an age has no limit life look like to you? I know you have some multiple examples.
Yeah, well, I come from a long life family on one side, and I believe I have the genes of the lifers.
Mhm.
So I've seen people, live into their 90s. And so when I work with people in their 70s and 80s, I can sense that they've got life in them. They never planned on stopping, like you said. They have always been people, but they just moved on to something different. So I love that. But there are people that are doing something different, that they have made a major internal change because of something. Maybe they see their friends dying younger than they expected, or they're taking stock of things around them, or yeah, I mean, sometimes I think it's a lot of people, I think, just want more fun.
Yeah.
To get out and have friends and socialize in an area that's of interest to them. And I love that. And a book is great for that. You go to author fairs, book fairs, you do talks, you talk to book clubs,
Mhm.
and it's very satisfying. So I love that. You enrich your life by keeping on,
Mhm.
trying the new stuff.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, because I feel like I'm in my mid 50s, I'm just starting to feel my body just not bounces back from injuries as fast as it used to. And then I project forward 20, 30 years. I think, wow. And people might not feel their best and they're still doing all the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One great example is the woman that you described earlier. So yeah, that's a really broad and a broader, more general, but just as important approach to what an age has no limit life looks like. It doesn't have to be exotic. It doesn't have to be adventure filled. It's just, as you said, really understanding that sometimes you just want to have fun, and you can do that at any age. You've accomplished quite a bit, though. Would you say that you have a bucket list? And
Mm.
what are some things that are on your bucket list? Assuming you believe in the bucket list approach.
I don't have a technical bucket list, but there are a couple of things I would like. I have a list of about 20 more businesses I would like to start. I don't think it's realistic to start them, but I call them all businesses with personalities.
Mhm.
They're not easy businesses, they're personality filled businesses. So I would like to have enough money and energy to open up one or two of those. And then I'd like to travel more. I imagined back in my early days of international relations that I would be a global traveler in my life, and I have not been. I have been too focused on work, I think.
Mhm.
And so I look forward to trying to travel more. That I would say those two things.
Mhm. Any country you want to share that is like at the top of your list? You're like, oh, I can't wait to get there.
Uh, I don't think so. Well, I mean, there's just all sorts of places. And I'd like to go back to places I've already been, like Spain and Mexico. I've never been to Barcelona. I haven't been to Amsterdam. My in-laws are from India and they would like us to take a family trip there. And that's sort of on our horizon.
Hmm.
I'd like to go to Canada more often.
Yeah,
I'd like to
yeah,
go to Quebec and Vancouver and Toronto.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I've never been to Quebec. Definitely want to go. Went to Toronto once. I would go back. But like you said, it's a big world and you have time to make that decision.
yeah.
I absolutely believe that you'll be able to accomplish at least a few of those businesses that you want to actually launch. But I do want to thank you so much for spending some time with us, telling us quite a bit about Sharon Woodhouse, the person, and Sharon Woodhouse, the owner of Conspire Creative. I just want to make sure I have that correct. And if
Yep.
you can tell the audience again where they can find out about Conspire Creative and some of the other places you may be online.
Yeah, the website conspirecreative.com leads to everything. But I also have started putting my big collection of Medium articles onto Substack. So right now that's free. It's called An Author Business You Love, Conspire Creative. You can find that. And then you'll be able to just, I'm dripping these 200 some articles there on author businesses.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Sharon, for spending some time with us. And I really, really appreciate you, telling us quite a bit more about who you are. And of course, being another example of the fact that age has no limit. And so for those of you who are listening, I'm hoping that you enjoyed learning about Sharon. And again, she's yet another example that truly age has no limit.